There's still fans of Lord of the Rings. That's going to follow you forever, you know. I wonder, do people always, do they come up, is that the movie they come up to you the most and stop you on the street, or others?
There was a period, you know, you gauge it by the red carpets or sometimes people on the street, like what pictures or what DVDs or posters are they wanting you to sign? And there was a period, you know, after those movies came out, it was just that. And, but over the years, you know, like, say starting 6, 7 years ago, it started to be more like, not more than that, there's always a predominance of Lord of the Rings. But there would be, you know, the Cronenberg movies, Hidalgo, depending where I was in the world, some foreign movies that I've done, and a lot of, I've signed, during the rollout of Green Book, I've signed a lot of Captain Fantastic memorabilia, so.
Oh, yeah.
So it's more balanced, but, you know, I don't, you know, people often ask me, journalists or people, does it bother you that people are constantly wanting to come up to you and start talking in Elvish, thinking you're going to be able to have a full conversation, or, you know, the Lord of the Rings thing? And I said, no, why would that bother me? It was a great experience, and it opened the door, you know, I wouldn't have been, Cronenberg, even if he wanted me to play the lead in History of Violence, and when he was casting me in 2004, there's no way that a studio would have said, yeah, okay, unless I'd been in that smash hit. It was great for me and everybody else involved in it. So of course I'm honored every time somebody comes by. It's like, great. I mean, it gave me a chance to do that. It gave me a chance to have the same studio that made Lord of the Rings say, yeah, of course, Ed. You know, when Ed Harris wanted me to be in Appaloosa with him, it was not a problem, and that was largely due to the success of Lord of the Rings. So it would be rude and short-sighted of me to, I mean, even if I felt that way, which I don't have any resentment, or why would I? I mean, it's great. It's wonderful when anybody relates to your work or to the story you were in, because that's essentially why I got into it. I was relating in that way to what I was watching. I was fascinated with it and curious, and you do get really good questions from people. There's people that know so much about a particular movie that they can not only recite lines, but they'll ask you, why did the screenwriter choose that line at that time? And you're scratching your head thinking, like 20 movies ago, why? And sometimes they're right. You're like, you know what? I wish you'd been around, because we would have done a lot better job. But what are you going to do? It's not you can't make a perfect movie. You can't do a perfect acting job, no matter what. But the idea is to try, you know.
It's so much stuff happened to you on these. I heard on Towers that you actually broke your tooth, and you said don't stop or something. You went to the crew and said get some super glue or something, just put it right back in.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to go to the dentist later, but I figured let's not lose. We got a whole crew here, and let's keep going. But it was the lunch break, and they insisted, so I went into downtown in my costume. It was quite something. I walked into the dentist's office, and I was spattered with this black stuff, which is the orc blood. As you Lord of the Rings experts know, they don't have red blood, they have black blood. And so I was kind of splattered with all this stuff, and the guy sort of fixed me up. I said, don't wipe the blood off, that's continuity. And he put in a piece of, you know, this new, it still hasn't come off. He did a good job. It was actually Peter Jackson's dentist, and he did it, boom, like that. And I said, okay, thank you, I'll talk to you later, I gotta go. And we went back, and then I was fighting with those guys again half an hour later, so.
Wow. Impressive.
It was fun. Fortunately, we were shooting in Wellington at the studio at that point. If we'd been out in the mountains, I would have been out of luck. They said, what's super glue? Just keep working.
All three of those movies got Best Picture nominations. Of course, the final one won 11 Academy Awards and everything. What was your personal favorite of them?
I've answered this before and gotten a lot of grief for it from people and misinterpreted. So I'll just say the extended version of the first movie, I particularly liked simply because it was the one in which there was the most human-to-human actor contact. They got increasingly more, and I have nothing against it. That's what's been misinterpreted. You know, the special effects stuff, the green screen stuff and all that, the CG work, which is, you know, it was groundbreaking. But I like working with people, you know, and more than I like imagining that they're there, although I've done that, and that's okay too. You know, when you have to. But I'd rather work with somebody. And it was also the one that seemed to adhere most closely to the actual words of Tolkien. You know, things gradually became, you know, in the spirit of Tolkien, it kept being done. But the extended version of the Fellowship of the Ring, I thought was the closest, from my point of view, to the actual work of J.R.R. Tolkien. And
it's cool. Yeah. I know you're an accomplished horseman and swordsman and all of that. The people that work with you say you're among the best they've ever seen do the sword work, first of all. I know Mr. Anderson said...
Bob Anderson.
Yeah, Bob Anderson said, without doubt, the best he's ever seen. And he's a legend in that.
He's amazing. He's passed away, unfortunately. But I got to work with him twice. The Lord of the Rings trilogy and also El Triste, which was a 17th century Spanish movie, big production for Spain, period piece, and he was the sword master because they don't have such a tradition in Spain like they do in France or England or the United States of doing these epic, you know, period pieces with battles and, you know, costume dramas, and so they don't have. I mean, they have good fencers and stuff, but as far as sword work in movies. He said, well, who would you recommend? I said, well, can you hire anybody you want? And I said, well, Bob Anderson. And I said, but he's getting up there, and I don't know if he's doing any more. He said, well, ask him. We'd love to have him. And I know he's done some movies here. In the 50s, he was participating as a, you know, swords guy on some of the big American productions, you know. And so I went to meet Bob. He was in Hollywood, and he had just left. I think it was one of the sequels, or maybe Zorro Part 2. And he had left under circumstances. He didn't like the way they were doing it. He felt that it wasn't like swordplay of that time. There was too much, he said, too much ninja stuff in it or something. He's probably right. It was like, you know, and so they parted ways amicably, and he said, that's it, I'm done. I said, well, I got this great story, you know, that we're going to do in Spain, and I know you've worked in Spain, and you'd get to do it exactly the way you want. He goes, what is it? Is it, you know, sword and dagger, 17th century? I go, yeah, rapier and dagger. And he said, and will they make it look like people, like you're really killing people? And I said, I think that's the idea. No, because I mean, really, no ninja stuff. I go, I don't think there's going to be any ninja stuff. But I think you'd have a free rein. He goes, well, finally, if I could do it exactly the way I want to. And so he did that. That was his last movie he did, and he did an amazing job. And they worshipped him. The day he left, there was a few days left after without swordplay, so he was going home to England. He wasn't well, actually. He was in a wheelchair a lot. I mean, we're here, right? There's not a thing. There's not like a 8 o'clock show or something. I have a story that's really nice about him. Bob Anderson comes in, right? And the guy who was bringing in, you know, like all the opponents, they got real fencers, like one of the national fencing coaches brought in all these really good fencers. And one of them was this amazing, he was a really gifted guy, like Olympic level fencer. And Bob was, at that point, he was in a wheelchair, and he was like watching. You know, some days he could get up, but he was very frail. And he's watching, and he had a translator, because none of these guys really spoke English. And we're doing a scene where I'm facing down a bunch of pirates, basically, or buccaneers, and it was like a kind of a grim fight, and I'm being backed into a corner by all these guys. And then there's one guy in particular who was really nasty and very fast, and so, and he goes, cut. And then he says to the translator, tell the bad guy, the real, you know, the main bad guy to come over. And he was this fencing star, you know, athlete. And he looks at him in his wheelchair, and like Bob's arms at this point were like that big around, and he was like really pretty emaciated, but he had his wits about him. And he goes, I was watching your sword play, and the guy's translating, and I think you should rotate clockwise, like about 1/8 of an inch. What's that in centimeters? Something, and then you'll find you'll have much better results. And the guy translated the guy, and the guy sort of smiled, you know, benevolently, and you know, thank you, master, but it served me quite well so far. My grip, you know, I'm hot shit, basically. And he didn't say that, but I mean, he was very polite. But it was, and Bob goes, oh, he doesn't want to do it. Okay. Bring me a sword. And so they bring him a sword. He's sitting there in his wheelchair, this little like bird of a man at this point, and he goes, get in position, get on guard, and the guy's like, so he said, tell him to, get in his position, his defensive position. And so he gets ready, and he says, are you ready? Okay. Listo? Sí. Yes, he's ready, master. You sure you're ready? ¿Estás seguro que estás listo? Sí. Okay. And so, and then he just goes like that. And you couldn't even see how fast he did it. He just flicked his hand, just moved his hand like that, and the guy's sword went flying across the room. And he was red-faced, right? And Bob says, well, I got the drop on you. You probably didn't see that coming. You probably weren't really ready. Go get your sword. And then it was humiliating because the guy had to walk over and get his sword. And he gets over and he goes, now you know what I'm going to do, so get in your position, their firmest defensive position. And this is like a big guy, a strong guy, and Bob's like this, and he's got a little shawl over his knee and everything. Little did this guy know that he had like taught Errol Flynn everything and all that. But he goes, okay, you ready? You ready? You ready? You ready? Again, same thing. It was like a Yoda moment, And the guy and then he said, wait, before you go pick up your sword over on the other end of the room, ask him if he's willing to maybe rotate like 1/8 of an inch. And he goes, I'll try that. Awesome.
So good. So
I still don't know how he did it. Because the guy was like that the second time, and he just went, and it just went.
Amazing. And amazing on horses, too. I watched you in that last clip, moving with that horse and the dialogue and all precision. You obviously know what you're doing on a horse. And you mentioned this movie, and when we put this tribute together, they said, is there any movie that I've left off the list? Yes. Hidalgo, I have to have in this. Sorry. And actually, I was out to dinner with Leonard Maltin, who's going to be doing Glenn Close here tomorrow, last night, and he said, I hope Hidalgo's in your tribute here. And I said it absolutely is. So many people love that movie. And again, it's another...
That's one that I sign a lot. Actually.
Yeah. It's a beautiful movie. The horse is great. I understand you got the horse from Rings and from that?
I did. The one from Hidalgo is still alive. The 2 horses that I ride in Lord of the Rings have passed away. They were, some years ago, and they were up there in years at the time, too. So that's the way it is. But TJ, as his name is, the Hidalgo horse, he's still going.
Oh, that's cool. It's such a rousing adventure movie and so great. And we have the best clip from that, followed by a couple of more David Cronenberg movies. So let's take a look at this right now.